Coming live from Stamford, Connecticut, USA is our guest tonight. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have John Mendez, serial entrepreneur, realtor, podcast host, and a good one at that, walk to wealth, and a social media expert. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, AJ, for the opportunity. I'm super excited. You have a lot of energy. I feel the energy already, so I'm super excited for this conversation that we have today.
Thank you, and you bring a lot of energy in me because you are talking about money. You talk about walk to wealth, and you also talk about how to lead a purpose-driven life, and that those things, actually put me extra energy in me, and that is what we'll be talking about. But first, John, just to understand from you, what made you, start walk to wealth? You believe in, helping other to achieve a life of abundance. So
Yeah.
let's start from there about your podcast about the walk to wealth.
Yeah, so let me go back in a time machine. This is around August, July-ish of 2021. And me and one of my good friends would always hop on FaceTime and talk about life, goals, things we want to accomplish. And one day he was like, "Hey bro, maybe we should start a podcast." And I was like, "You know what? I think that'll be a good idea." Long story short, I won't bore you with all the details, but he ended up going back to college to start his junior year. I had left school to pursue my real estate license, so our schedules didn't align anymore. I knew I still wanted to move forward with the podcast. And about after maybe like 3-ish, 4-ish months of procrastinating, I finally came up with the name Walk to Wealth. And the meaning behind the name is for the 99% of us that aren't overnight sensation, it's a long walk to wealth. And some may walk faster than others, but what good is sprinting to the finish line if you pass it, if you pass out when you cross it? And so that's how the name Walk to Wealth came about. And for me, I learned very early on that wealth and riches are two very different things, and people tend to get confused. And I also knew that I wanted a way to document my journey while I'm on it, still in live in real time, but also help inspire and help educate other people. So podcasting was the perfect medium to do all of those things, and that's kind of how the Walk to Wealth podcast came about.
Right. And why did you drop out of college during the
Yeah.
pandemic?
So a little bit of context. I got into about 13 schools when I as a senior in high school. I had pretty great grades, and I ended up going to the University of Connecticut. Now, the only reason I was going to college was to learn how to network and to learn how to live on my own. Those were the two reasons. Now, this is 2019, no, 2020 it was, and pandemic took over the world. So now I'm taking classes online from home. And now I was never an entrepreneur. I was never, the kid that was selling candy bars in school, or I didn't have the paper route. I didn't have the lemonade stand, right? So I was never a born entrepreneur. But now we're in this pandemic. I'm taking classes from my bedroom. So I'm not learning how to live my own because I'm still in my house. And then I can't network with anyone because everyone has their cameras off on Zoom. It's a lecture hall of, 300 people. And the only person with the camera on and speaking is the professor. And so, and then on top of that, I'm also taking gen ed courses. And as anyone that went to college knows, your first 2 years is all gen eds, and you're just trying to get by, right? Because none of those classes really have anything to do with what you want to major in. So we're just all trying to get by. So I couldn't network, couldn't learn how to live my own. My two main reasons for going to college are out the window. And then I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. And after reading that book, I realized that a lot of the things in my life resonated with how the poor dad led his life. And, my upbringing with being raised by my grandparents who are immigrants, they resonated what the poor dad was talking about in the book. And then the rich dad, it made me curious because I was wondering, are there people actually out there that think that way? And that book planted the seed in me to realize that there's another world of information out there that isn't being taught in school, that isn't being taught in my circle of friends and in the environment that I was in. So during that winter break, I went down a rabbit hole of looking up personal finance, how to build the right credit, how to invest in index funds, things like that. But the simple stuff, but nevertheless important stuff, right? And after that, now I came back my second semester of my sophomore year, and it's like I seen the light, right? I seen that there's another world out there. Now I'm coming back to, sophomore year again. We're still online, so I'm still not, learning from home. And it's like I already seen that I could teach myself more about these things that are actually, more practical and applicable to, my life and becoming financially literate. I can learn more of that on my own than I was learning at school. So I decided to, sign up for my real estate classes. Then I stopped showing up to my college classes, and I never looked back.
Right, right, John. So, what do you do at Walk to Wealth? What sort of people you get as guests? What exactly do you discuss there?
Yeah. So my four main pillars is, entrepreneurship, real estate, mindset, and finance, right? Mindset, because it all starts from within, right? And everyone talks about it. If you don't believe that it's possible, you'll never achieve anything in life, right? That's where it always starts. So that's why I talk about mindset. I talk about personal finance there, because if you're not a good steward of your own money, then you'll never be a good steward of any form or type of money, right? So that's why that's important. Then entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship allows is one of the only ways that you can actually have actual freedom and security in your life. And because a lot of times people say get the degree just so you have a backup, but then you hear of all the jobs that people are losing right now because of the, economic uncertainty. So it's like, are you really secure if you have a degree or not? Because I know tons of people with tons of student loan debt and tons of degrees and no job opportunities, right? So entrepreneurship is one of my big topics I love talking about. And then real estate, because real estate has built the most millionaires out of any other vehicle. So those are the main four pillars that I talk about. And my goal really is to help other people like me, in their early teen, like late teens, early adulthood, that know the traditional route of working a 9 to 5, for the rest of their life and hopefully having enough to retire in their 60s isn't the path that they want to take.
Right, John. Right. Now, from 2020 to start of 2023, you are a
Yeah.
serial entrepreneur,
Yeah.
realtor, licensed realtor, podcast host,
Yeah.
hosting such a wonderful podcast, and you are also a social media expert
Yeah.
and several other things. How do you manage all these things? And amidst all this, who is John Mendez? How do people know who exactly they are talking to when they are talking to John Mendez in different roles?
Yeah, so full transparency, I was naive. I was a very, very naive, thinking that just because I'm young and energetic and hungry that I could do everything all at the same time. And take it from me, it doesn't matter how young you are, focusing on multiple things is a recipe for disaster. You are not going to find success unless you have a massive team behind you, supporting you. Though, real estate, social media, and podcast, they're all very, very separate industries, right? And I thought coming in that I could, handle and manage it all. And it wasn't until about November of 2020, December of 2022, um, that I realized that I need to become more intentional. Because in real estate, I wasn't growing. My social media stuff, I wasn't growing. My podcast numbers were going down. And I was wondering why. It's like I'm doing everything, but I would just spread so thin, I didn't realize it. Right. And I didn't have focus and clarity as to what I really wanted to do. And it wasn't until, just literally this past month in December where I realized that the podcast is the sole thing that I want to have, like want to move forward with. And it's kind of difficult because in life, the phone will ring with different opportunities, and sometimes you have multiple phones ringing at the same time. And I thought I could pick up all three phones at the same time and have a conversation, and then I realized slowly but surely that that's not a great way to go about living life. Not because it's you want to have all the opportunities, but if you're a solopreneur, you're starting off on your own and you don't have a ton of money to start off, like you're really starting from ground zero, you gotta niche down, you gotta focus up, you gotta lock in and double down on, what is the main priority. And for me, I had too many priorities. So I know I had a lot of great experience, but I definitely didn't hit the goals and the growth that I wanted to in certain areas last year because I was spread so thin.
It's fine. It's fine. You are young, and learning is a process. Even I am learning. We are all work in progress. And as it's very tough to firstly know what you don't need to know, and then focus on the things that you need to go forward with. So that's
Yeah.
fine. Even I may continue to look at so many things at the same time. And
Yeah.
then wisdom is that you learn and find out exactly what works for you. And that is, I guess, even a lot of successful people continue to do that and have advisors for. Now,
Yeah.
coming to the, creating a life of purpose,
Yeah.
you talk uh, about that the only world that revolves around you is yours.
Yeah.
And then you also talk about achieving a life of abundance. You talk about helping others to achieve a life of abundance.
Yeah.
How do you put those things together? On one side, that the only world that revolves around you is yours.
Yeah.
And then you talk about others helping others. How do you put those two things together the way
Yeah.
you,
No,
how do you do?
that's an amazing question. And so to answer it, you are the center of your own world, your own reality, right? And I am the center of my own world and my own reality. But we're not the center of the world and the reality, right? So there's about 8 billion people on this earth. There's about 8 billion different worlds going on at the same time. But the world is only one. The, actual world is only one. So we have to be the center of our own world, because if we're not at the center of our own world, we're not going to be able to show up for the bigger picture, right? I can't be a great best friend. I can't be a great, boyfriend. I can't be a great, brother. I can't be a great friend. I can't be a great person to all these other people if I'm not the main priority in my own world. Right. And by making yourself the priority of your own world, the center of your own world, you can then help other people at the best level possible. Because a lot of the times, what people do, we send other people before us because it gives, it helps us feel better. It makes us feel like morally just, and, it makes us feel good. And you're doing that, but you're secretly doing the people you love a disservice, because you're not becoming the best person you could potentially be, because you're holding yourself back. And it's not until you put yourself first that you could actually really help others, because you can't help yourself, you can't help anyone else.
Okay, you are young, John, and
Yeah.
a lot of talk nowadays is about self love, self care, along with self improvement.
Yeah.
And then we also talk about empathy, helping others. How should a young person listening to so many voices, and sometimes people may say that you are focused on making money and that is selfish, whereas
Yeah.
one will say I need to take care of myself so that I can help others. As a very young person,
Yeah.
how is telling others to live a life of abundance, live a life of purpose, what would you tell them? How to balance all these things together, as you clearly rightly said, that there are 8 billion people on this planet, and your world revolves around what the way you want to build it. And when
Yeah.
you are alone, there is nobody to help. So how at the same time you can take care of yourself, and at the same time also live with empathy, live a life of purpose to help others, be a part of your abundance.
Yeah, so I had this amazing opportunity to go to a summit back in June of 2022, that was run by Gary Keller, who's the founder of Keller Williams. And in there, he brought up this amazing idea, called the idea of counterbalancing, right? So in life, we're never balancing. We're never living a balanced life, right? Humans are terrible at multitasking. We're not wired to multitask. And so the idea of counterbalance comes in. So in your personal life, let's say you have a significant other. Let's say you're married, right? Let's say I have a wife. um, if I don't talk to my wife for 3 days and I don't give her any reason as to why, it's only so much longer before an argument or an issue happens, right? And so I have to constantly bounce back and forth when it comes from maintaining personal relationships and maintaining your personal life. You have to constantly bounce back and forth. The same thing, but like in business, you can go, you can put your head down and lock in on one thing for 6 months. And it's all about having that kind of awareness to know when you've gone too far in one direction and when you need to bounce back. And so we're never like really living a balanced life. Just some people get a lot better at counterbalancing. It's like almost like a seesaw essentially. And you go down one way, and if you go too far down, you might hit your butt. But if you have the counterbalancing, you'll kind of stop yourself. You'll realize you're going down, and then jump back up, right? And it's kind of like a seesaw. So in your personal life, you're counterbalancing, you're bouncing back and forth very quickly. In your work life, you kind of go, you can go a lot further in one direction before it's, you can bounce back. And then to answer your question about how can young people help, no matter what the age is, you should always have a mentor and be a mentor, because you're always two steps ahead of someone, and we all have life experiences, right, that we've gone through, whether it's professionally, whether it's personally, whether it's, physically, emotionally. We all have things that we can do with. And there's something that I learned, that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So even if it's something that's super traumatic, right? It's You could help someone else that's currently going through that. Or even better, you could help other people so that you prevent them ever having to experience it. That's a whole nother thing, right? And I feel like with young people, a lot of times we have skills that we don't see valuable because we grew up with it. For example, with the social media thing, I didn't value my social media skills. I didn't even think I had social media skills. I knew how to make videos just because, I could just make a video from being, just posting on my story and things like that. And then it wasn't until a moderator of one of the masterminds that I'm in. She actually was one of the founders of the mastermind calls that I'm on Clubhouse, or I used to be on. She was like, "Hey John, do you mind teaching a class on this?" And I was like, I never taught a class before." She was like, "John, tell us when you want it scheduled." And I was like, okay. I probably spent more time learning how to host a class on Zoom and use MailChimp to send out the emails for the invites than I did preparing for the class. But the class ended up having over 440 people, and that sparked the social media thing. And then I started learning more, like, hey, you know, it was just an intro level class. I'm not an expert at all whatsoever. And, you know, and that's just from me using what I've learned from using Instagram socially. I wasn't using it strategically for marketing purposes. I was just using it socially, and I was able to teach that. And people loved the class, but I didn't value it. It took someone else looking in to see the value that I had, because a lot of times we either A, discredit ourselves, or B, we don't recognize it because it comes kind of second nature to us.
Okay, okay. And let me take this opportunity to ask you, people who are, trying to skill themselves. And
Yeah.
then a lot of people on social media, they are doing all those different sort of, dance, or you can say lip syncs to somebody else's song. Is that a skill? If I do like this, do I become a skilled person? Or do I need to actually learn something genuine out of Zoom, or maybe a class held by you? That will be a skill set. What would you like to tell those people? What is there? Because you talked about one should know about their reality. How
Yeah.
should they know what is their reality? I'm
Yeah.
asking for a lot of people, because you are only making money for those social media giants. They
Yeah.
need, they are monster creatures in terms of need for a lot of content from all across the world.
Yeah.
But is that skilling you in the real sense? Is it worth putting that much of time and effort for, with due respect to whoever is doing what on the social media? But as a
Yeah.
young person who's making use of social media to a great extent for promoting what is good that can be done with social
Yeah.
media, what would you tell them?
So, people are going to use social media socially regardless, right? It's always been a thing. Even before the viral TikTokers and content creators, like look at Facebook when it first started off, right? People are always going to use social media to stay connected with people they love. And right now, we live in an economy where attention is the most valuable currency. And if you're not advertising in some way, shape, or form, uh, you're gonna get left behind. Why do you think McDonald's and all these major billion-dollar companies spend so much money on advertising? And all these influencers, like for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a big name in social media marketing space, and he has a whole dedicated staff of like 10 to 15 people, I think, or maybe like 10 to 20 people, just for solely social media. Like, the importance of marketing is so much, because I think on average now, at least in the US, people get like close to 14,000 marketing messages a day, right? Every single day, and our brain filters most of them out. So it's like there's so much that our brain has, and I'll share with you some statistics in the real estate space, just because I'm familiar with it, just because I was an active, that was my active thing for a while. But 91% of home sellers say they would use their agent again to sell their home. Only about 13% do, right? It's not because they don't like the agent, and this could be applied to most industries. It's not because they don't like the agent or the service or the product. It's because they didn't remember. Is they can't. We're fed so many messages. So with social media, you don't have to lip sync if that's not your thing. You don't have to, dance, and I could do a little dance and a little wiggle, but you don't have to do that to get views. It's like provide value in an entertaining way, whether that's you just talking with some energy, whether that's just people who, like, I know one guy, he has like over 100,000 on Instagram, and all he does is post quotes like about personal finance quotes. He doesn't even show his face. He never shows his face on any of his posts anywhere, and he just posts quotes, and he has over 100,000 followers. So you don't have to dance, but you have to be a present. You have to be top of mind no matter what industry you are, because if not, you're going to get left behind, and people are going to eventually forget about you. And it's not because they don't love you. It's not because they didn't like the job that you've done. It's just that people forget, and we have so much going on in our lives. Whatever comes first to mind when the time comes that they want to buy is most likely going to be the person that they go with.
Okay, okay. So, how does a person know what is their reality? What do they want to become? And when we talk about a purpose driven life, how do they know? Is that a purpose driven life? If you are doing something with course, okay, that needs a certain degree of mind understanding what
Yeah.
exactly people like, some degree of intellectual capacity is required for that, and to do
Yeah.
it continuously and to add value, who would want to see those quotes every day. But I was talking about a different kind of skill. I don't know whether that can be called skill in the longer sense of the word, where
Yeah.
you can actually get down to selling that skill to others if the social media was not there. But
Mm.
coming back to the point, how do you create a purpose driven life in today's time, especially when there is so much of difference in terms of different people's reality? How do I do that? How did you create a mission statement for that? Does it need recalibrating again and again, like you have become more intentional now?
Yeah.
How do people recalibrate? I wouldn't say it's like changing, counterbalancing. I would put it at recalibrating that particular mission in their life. How do they do that? Several questions at the same time, John, but so
Yeah.
that you can answer them at your own pace. They are all related, so I ask them at the same time.
Yeah, so I'll start things off with the mission statement question. For me, my mission statement is to enlighten and empower young adults to build wealthy and abundant lives. And a simple formula that anyone can use is, a verb, right? For mine is enlighten and empower, and then who, right? So for me, it's young adults, and then how, and I'm gonna help them build wealthy, abundant lives. That's just a simple formula anyone can use to create an easy mission statement. And for me, um, it was really getting clarity on who it is I can help. Out of all the people I could help, who is it that I could probably most help? And most times, if you don't know where to start, it's usually the you from 2 to 5 years ago. Like for me, so I was thinking about who's the John in sophomore year right now? Who's the John in freshman in high school right now that is just still just playing football, still, just super, just not aware of what the real world actually is, right? It's just that just the little kid, right? And so that's the person I help. So that's why I was inspired. And for me personally, I know so many people that, especially growing up in the projects and where I've grown up, I know so many people that don't want to take the traditional route, and there's nothing wrong about that. You just have to realize that with great power comes great responsibility, and if you decide to become an entrepreneur, everything falls on you. So if you become massively successful, everything falls on you. And in that same breath, if you suck and you don't make any money, everything falls on you. Right. But
Right.
it's possible, right? It is possible. So that's why I decided to focus on young adults, because I knew that there's a lot of people like me who may not want to take the traditional route and don't really know where to go. And a lot of times younger people don't want to listen to older people just because they feel as if they can't understand, when you probably already know that great wisdom stands the test of times, regardless of whatever age the person is. But a lot of times these young people aren't receptive to it because it's coming from an older person. So it's like, I'm a young person as well. What's your excuse now? Now you have to listen because I was just in your shoes, right? So that's kind of how I chose who. And then how am I going to do so? And the how really came from, that's the financial literacy is something that I wasn't taught. And that's something that I want to teach to other people. And that mindset of abundance, because abundance is more than just the money, right? And having that abundance in your personal life, your relationships, your opportunities and everything, just abundance in all is. So that's how I created my mission statement in terms of finding your purpose. So there's a concept I learned that I was reading up on called ikigai, and that's kind of what helped me realize that I want to focus on the podcast. And so for anyone that may not know, ikigai stands for your reason for being. And so I came from, as I said, Japan, and the people where it originated from have the longest life expectancy on the planet. So there's some merit to it, right? And so before steps is if anyone is right now has some free time, has a paper and pencil, you could probably go through this right now in real time. um the first circle is, what do you love to do? Write down everything you love to do, everything that you would do for the rest of your life if you'd never made a single penny on it, right? Once you get that list written down, the next step is, what does the world need? What are all the problems that you feel compelled to solve? Because there's a lot of issues going on. I still live, I'm a half, the cup is half full type of person. So I see a lot of beauty. I still believe this world is a great place, an amazing, beautiful place. But there's issues that could be solved. So which one do you need help? Do you feel compelled to solve? Once you write those down, that could be, the obesity crisis in the US. That could be, world hunger. It could be the climate issues, whatever it may be, whatever issues come to mind that you feel, that get you a little passionate about, right? Then the third one would be, is what can you be rewarded for? A lot of the times we do things and it's like volunteering and charity, and it makes us feel good, and it makes us feel fulfilled and whole. But at the end of the day, we have to make ends meet. We have to pay the bills, right? We can't avoid that. We still have to, pay for certain things. So if we're working for free, you know, uh, we won't be able to pay for any, keep the lights on. So unless you want to live homeless, you got to find something that you could be rewarded for. And then the last one is, what are you good at? And for when I speak to younger people, I change it to, what do you have the aptitude to be good at? Because a lot of times we have certain innate skills and talents that are very underdeveloped. For example, someone that's introverted, you may not be a good public speaker. Yes, you can work, at it to be good, but like you're going kind of against the grain a little bit. So what do you have the aptitude to be good at? For me, I had the gift of gab. I could talk your head off if you let me, but there's a difference between, you know, just small talk and talking for talking's sake and delivering a powerful, impactful message. But because I already like to talk, public speaking is something that was already kind of up my alley, right? And so when you find the intersection of the four things, what you love to do, what the world needs, what can you be rewarded for, and what you're good at, when you find the intersection of those four, that is called your ikigai. And if you have multiple things that you kind of don't really know where exactly to go, just start with someone or somewhere, and if that doesn't work out, cross it off and on to the next thing. The more you procrastinate, the more time you're wasting. So rather start something that you're kind of iffy about, and then not start at all and wait for the perfect one.
Right, John. Right. You indeed have a very wise head on your young shoulders. But then this wise head and the young shoulder certainly needs to earn his bread and butter. So, what can people connect with you for as you help them walk towards their, walk to their wealth level,
Mm,
to the wealth that they need? But what about can walk up to you for whatever you are doing along with the podcast, where they can take your
yeah.
services and pay for it?
Yeah, so I'm actually planning a virtual summit for March. It's going to be March 22nd to 24th. It's going to be a 3 day. The first day is going to be mindset because, as I mentioned earlier, it all starts from the mind, right? It all starts from within. Day two is going to be personal finance because, as I mentioned earlier, if you're not a good steward of your personal finances, you'll never be a good steward of any type of money. And then the third day is going to be entrepreneurship. And because, as I said, starting the business is a great way to finally put the ball back in your court and take your life into your own hands. And so that's virtual summit. Again, it's going to be March 22nd to the 24th. I'm going to have 15 amazing speakers. They're already lined up and confirmed and ready to go. And so that would be number one. Number two, for anyone that wants a little teaser and is, doesn't want to jump all in, I have a beginner's guide to entrepreneurship. It's the four businesses that you have to start before you start your dream business. A lot of the time we have an amazing idea, and we start it and sometimes it fails, and it's not because your idea sucked, it's because you didn't have the business experience to start, to take it off the ground. So that is going to be, I'll send you the links so everyone can have
Yes.
everything.
Right, right. That will be great. And how do people connect with you then? Apart from, obviously, you'll send me the links, and
Yeah.
I'll be very happy to add them to the YouTube description so that it helps people reach directly to you
Yeah.
and sign up for that great thing that's coming up. But
Yes.
how do people connect with you directly?
So you can find me on all the podcast directories. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. You can Facebook at Walk to Wealth, Walk number 2 Wealth. So follow me on your favorite platform of choice, and that's pretty much it. I'm very active on Instagram. That's where I'm most active at. But if you want to follow my personal page, it's John Mendez Official.
Right, right. My last question to you, John, is that you are very young and you have already done a lot of things, earned a lot of experience, and now you know a lot, earned a lot of wisdom, and now you
Yeah.
know a very strong way to move forward. You've
Hmm.
already become intentional as you have started this new year. Now, where do you want to reach? You have already reached many places, traversed many paths. Where do you want to reach, and uh, why do you want to go there? How does it work for you, say maybe in the next few years from now?
Yeah, so my short term 1 year goal is to get 100K downloads for the podcast, right? Because that's gonna put me in the upper echelon of podcasters, and that's gonna also open doors to public speaking, which is what I inevitably wanted to end up doing. Right now, as the time that we're recording this, I had one speaking gig in person so far, and I have another one coming in later this month at Podfest Expo, in January. So it's 2 speaking gigs so far. The doors are starting to open, and as I also do the virtual summits and continue to grow as a podcaster, that's going to open doors for me to do mega virtual summits and keep on growing from there. And just my main focus for this year, I haven't thought, 5 years out, because as I said, this past year I was spread very thin. So I had all these different goals for different areas. And so like this main goal is making sure that I get this 1 year on track, and the rest will come along the way. But mainly for this year is getting to 100K downloads and becoming part of the upper echelon of podcasters. Um,
Right, John. Right. That's so nice of you to join on this show, John. And as you help others walk to wealth, I'm sure the God Almighty will help you walk towards your destiny strongly, wisely, and very intentionally, efficiently. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.